Carl Hopkins,
Here.
Bruce Miller,
Here.
Craig Arcuri, Dolores Johnson, Karen Kahn, Kirk Martin,
Here.
Jim Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a public comment period, which is any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not on the schedule today. And we have a total of 15 minutes, but no speaker more than 2. We have 1 speaker, Dr. Glenn Pratt, I believe, please. If you could step up to the podium, we'd be happy to listen to you.
My hearing is impaired, so if you speak louder, I can sometimes understand you. I'm concerned about the memorial at the Santa Barbara Airport, and I looked up what I could learn about the project, and I learned that the artist's vision didn't include the aircraft. And I looked up other examples of wings of honor, and they all included airmen, the planes they flew, military and civilian personnel who supported their mission. So I'm concerned about the elimination of the aircraft, and I got one of these, which are really marvelous pamphlets. I appreciate it. On the front is a photograph of 40 some odd, I believe they're pilots, and a F-4U Corsair, and a dog in the foreground. And I hope that's what Wings of Honor are about, is the people and the planes that they flew. Another factor that puzzles me is the scale of the proposed Wings of Honor. And that's a function of the artist's vision. And I'm wondering what you all think about this issue, and what about the airmen that are pictured here and their relatives and their survivors, their families? What do they think about it? I don't know how to find out what their thoughts are. That's basically what I'm here for.
Okay, we thank you for your comments. As I noted, we are unable to take action on any item that is not on the agenda, such as this. But your comments have been heard both by us and I'm sure by Councilman Hotchkiss. And you may be able to take this to other items, but as I said, we are unable to take any action on any non-agenda items at this time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perhaps the airport director could just give us a brief synopsis of where that project is now. As the chair's already said, we can't discuss the item, but if you could give us an update on where that project is.
I'd like to make 2 comments, actually. The World War II Memorial site is in the overlook area by the long-term lot. That particular memorial is dedicated to the Santa Barbara airmen who died during World War II. and it does list their names and all of the squadrons that flew out of Santa Barbara, along with photographs and names. In fact, we just recently added a name that had been inadvertently left off, but it is there, and it's on the monument that's there. As far as the wings project that Pierre Clysons is funding for the airport, you recall that we do have the agreement between Pierre Clysons and the city for the airport to maintain that project once it's completed. Most recently, they took the wings project to the Architectural Board of Review, and that particular session was just to look at signage and also the benches that were there. At that point, they have completed their concept review and will be going forward to get their coastal development permit, and then go into, once that's done, complete the city's process and do construction. So it's underway and has received favorable comments through the Visual Arts and Public Places, as well as Architectural Board of Review.
Is there a guesstimate of a timeline when it would be completed?
I don't have an updated timeline. I know that they were really interested in trying to get it done by September of this year, but I don't see that as being feasible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next are notices that the Marketing and Community Relations Subcommittee met on Monday, February 9th in the Administration Building, and that on Thursday, February 12th at 5:30, the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at the Administration. Next item is the minutes. We would like a motion to waive the reading and approve the minutes of Wednesday, January 21st.
So moved?
Moved twice and
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar, we have 3 leases and a property management report. Is there any discussion or questions on the consent calendar? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second, to approve consent as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Hearing 4 ayes, I won't ask for opposed. And liaison reports, City of Santa Barbara Councilman Frank Hotchkiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. I think that I've heard 2 years out for the wings, whatever we're calling them now. Part of the reason is that they're so unusual, they can't be made in the United States. They're made in Germany and then shipped over here. That's quite impressive. I heard with concern the gentleman's remarks. He was obviously moving and sincere, and my hope is that whereas this is a, well, I want to say an abstract version of what we're trying to represent of flight, as it were, and honor and sacrifice, I think also, that hopefully the work of art will satisfy those. From what I've seen so far, I think that they will. Different note, just an update on where we stand in Santa Barbara. Encouraging, I think, in every instance that whereas 6 years ago our reserves for the city, which are required to be 25% of our overall budget, were $10 million low. Today we've reduced that to only $2 million. And as you know, the greater the budget, the greater the reserves required, because it's always a percentage. So it's like trying to always play catch up. And it's up now to the city council to determine how much more of the surplus that we get is devoted to reserves and how much should be going into much needed capital projects. And that'll be a discussion that's ongoing in the next few months. Interestingly, we have seen a significant increase in the number of development requests for new structures in the city. And as you know, I think the prospect of district elections is, I think we could call it probable. And to that end, the first public outreach for their input is not this Saturday, but a week from Saturday at the Faulkner Gallery at 9 in the morning to hear suggestions from the public about how we should comply with state law. Finally, I know that you, members of the commission, have a challenge upcoming with some airlines deciding that Santa Barbara is not quite their place right now, but hopefully with Hazel's work, they'll be coming back shortly. But I wish you the best in trying to make two ends meet, as it were, when the belt sometimes seems shorter than the waist, if I can put it that way.
Thank you. And we also have our Goleta liaison, Councilmember Michael T. Bennett.
Thank you so much. I was just going to bring to your attention a change in the roadway configuration that we had expected to have already occurred out on Highway 101. And I know probably the staff is up to speed on this, but maybe not everyone else. It's been delayed so that the off-ramp southbound to Los Caneros will remain closed until the end of March. And because that has to remain closed until the end of March so the construction can proceed far enough to be able to open it up safely, that prevents the freeway from moving to the north side for the southbound, which gets confusing, I recognize, but nonetheless, that's what's going to happen. So they can open up the old box culverts that were there that were inadequate to sustain the flood flows that come through underneath the freeway. And that means that the off-ramp, southbound off-ramp at Fairview can't be closed because that is still closed at Los Caneros. And by rule, there cannot be two off-ramps closed back to back. But when our project gets finished, which is on our shoulders at Los Caneros, we've been advised that the contractor has told us we will be finished with that to be able to open up the end of March, which will then allow Caltrans and their project in the flood control district to move forward, close the southbound off-ramp at Fairview, move the traffic to the north side, and then we'll continue on with the project and completing it at the end of the year. So if all goes reasonably well, and we're behind schedule now, we will have completion as we're hopeful. And so anyway, I just thought I'd bring you up to date. That's the question I get asked a lot in this community, and it certainly affects the airport to a degree, either at Los Caneros or at Fairview. So you're going to get impacted again at a different location.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any questions? Next is the administrative reports. The first one is a presentation on the certification and operations division's roles and responsibilities.
Yes, Commissioner Chair. This is the last division that will be presenting this year anyway, perhaps, on roles and responsibilities. You'll recall last year we got started with patrol and just to introduce you to airport staff and what we actually do behind the scenes. And so tonight we have Tracy Lincoln, the operations manager, and then Kelly Canas, who's our operations supervisor. And I think they're going to do a duo. Tracy's going to start and hand it off to Kelly, then back and forth. So I hope you enjoy their presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johns. I wanted to give a brief history to start out. A couple of years ago, the commission heard us talking about the need to separate the roles of patrol and operations, and we have finished doing that this year and just finished filling those positions. One of the key elements of this is having airport patrol focus more on law enforcement, and which has always been a primary role, and create the operations division as it is at most airports in the United States, really focusing on the airfield and safety aspects of aviation. We have a full staff, but it's still considered bare bones in the industry, but it's doing great. We had our new airport operations supervisor, Kelly Knaus. Her first day was end of October, October 23rd, last week of October. We had our other new people got the last one hired up in mid-January. So we expect to have staffs fully trained in April and kind of complete the separation of the divisions at that time. As I mentioned, we'll be greatly expanding operations role because the FAA is becoming much more of the cop rather than collaborator. Yes, they've changed many requirements in the last 5 years alone, and they're becoming much less tolerant to variations from the standards. So we want to tighten the ship, and that's what we believe this will do. We're increasing the SOC responsibilities. Kelly will tell you a little bit more about that. I know you're familiar with, they do handle all of our communications and access control. Patrol will continue to support all of airport security, and the patrol supervisor will continue to serve as the airport security coordinator, a position that was created by a requirement as of post 9/11. I believe it kicked in 2002 or 2003. Our patrol supervisor serves as that requirement, and I'm an alternate. And one of the main things that you'll hear more about in this presentation is our self-inspection program. So I just wanted to kind of start out with the history of the increased regulations, the need to separate the divisions and kind of focus on the core competencies. And I'll let our new airport operations supervisor, Ms. Kelly Knaus, who's doing a phenomenal job for us, take over from here, and I'm sure I'll chime in on occasion.
All right, thanks, Tracy. Again, my name's Kelly Knaus. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about basically where the needs were for operations to kind of step in and fill the role. The self-inspection program has been completed in the past primarily by Airport Patrol. And they've done a great job, but we really want to bring up the level of our inspection process here at the airport. We also identified that our construction safety management could be done internally. Most of our construction projects, we hire an outside sourced inspector to come oversee the projects, where operations staff could do the same thing. Some of the staff we've hired has the experience at other airports to understand what the regulations are for construction management, because it's a unique entity on airports. We also have a driver's training program on the airport. We provide training for everyone that drives on the airport, since it is an environment much different than what we call landside, off the airport. And we're bringing that program up. We also provide personnel training for everyone that's badged on the airport, and we've identified a greater need to respond to more accidents, incidents, and kind of bring a full safety culture to those responses through our ops department. And on also record keeping, which we've been doing, and we just want to, with new technologies, bring our level of record keeping up and make it a little more thorough. So we have kind of a flow chart here of our department. Tracy's the airport operations manager, and as you can see here, he oversees 4 different divisions. We've got operations, patrol, ARF, which is airport rescue firefighting, and maintenance. I oversee the SOC staff, which is our security operations center, the badge office, access control, and the noise abatement program. And then within the security operations center, we now have 2 different levels of employees. We have kind of an entry-level airport operations specialist, and then the senior ops specialists that have all been here a year or longer. So I'll give you a little more detail about what I do and what our ops department does with the staff that we've brought on. Our primary focus is the FAR Part 139 compliance. So that's the nuts and bolts of how we run the airport to meet the federal requirements. And there's a saying within aviation, they say, if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. We're all dramatically different, but it's really important to meet the 139 requirements and still provide excellent customer service to our tenants in our unique culture, or our unique environment. So as I said, I oversee the Security Operations Center, which is basically the information hub of the airport, the badge office, and the badge office also coordinates with a lot of the training for everyone that receives a badge. They have to go through training, background checks, depending on the type of badge they hold. The access control system is all the gates and doors on the airport, so I oversee that process, and we are in the process of and almost completed with an update of our system. So we're excited to have that completed. We're at about 98% right now. And then our noise abatement program, we We receive complaints from local residents, research those complaints, and basically speak to pilots that are not necessarily complying with our voluntary noise abatement program. So within the operations staff, we have 8 personnel. We have 1 part-time staff in the badge office. She's also supported by an administrative position within the airport. We have 4 operations specialists and 3 senior ops specialists.
Just one quick comment on the access control system. Kelly mentioned that we are changing out and we have a new system going in, and she just stepped into the middle of that and took it over. Very difficult process, because as we go from one system to the next, our SOC operators are literally working the old system for half the airport and then the new system for the other half as we change it over panel by panel. So over the past couple of months while we've been doing this, it's been an impressive amount of coordination that has gone down to make this happen with minimal disruption.
I was actually just speaking with them outside the gate, because the procedure of waiting for the green doesn't happen anymore, so I kept going over and over again.
We've updated the training for the badge. When your badge is renewed, you'll see
Clearly, I
that in
need
the
more
training.
training.
Yes.
So right here I have an overview of the FAR Part 139. Part D of the regulations are the operational requirements for all airports. So we fall into this category, and the ops department is involved in all of these different areas. And I highlighted in yellow the main areas that we deal with most of these on a day-to-day basis, thankfully not the snow and ice control. But the ops department is all very familiar and integrated with the airport emergency plan. Depending on the type of incident, we're either responding and providing incident command, or we're part of a unified command with ARF and Airport Patrol, depending on the incident. And as we've said, one of our primary objectives and roles is the self-inspection program, and that's also directly tied in with the condition reporting. So we do daily inspections, a daytime inspection and an evening inspection. We also do supplemental inspections when we have accidents or incidents or any type of movement area closure. And we document that and then track it, make sure that the airfield is ready to be opened up and meeting the federal requirements. The pedestrian and ground vehicles is the training aspect. We also, in addition to providing the training, we do ramp checks, make sure that only badged personnel are within the air operations area, the AOA, and make sure that anyone who's operating a ground vehicle is trained to be in the area that they're at. And we're also working directly on the wildlife hazard management. We currently have a wildlife hazard assessment going on. Actually, some of the biologists are out tonight doing night surveys. And operations works directly with them, working on recommendations to better mitigate the wildlife hazards that we have here. So we've got a couple pictures here of some of the operations staff, their duties. I have a picture on the left there of the SOC. You can see there's 2 positions there. The one on the left is typically the primary position. That's usually filled by an operations specialist. Their primary role is to funnel all the information that comes into the SOC, so any requests for law enforcement, for an emergency response from ARF, any communication from air traffic control typically comes there. Also, airfield discrepancies and maintenance would go through there as well. So they're really busy communicating the flow of information. And then if we have with this advancement in our department and bringing on new staff, we're soon to be having the seniors on duty being able to respond out of the SOC. In the past, they were confined there and couldn't respond to airfield. So now we'll have the capability to do that. And as you can see on the picture on the left, that's one of our recent responses where we had a disabled Cessna that had a flat tire. Unfortunately, it came to a stop at the intersection of 2 runways, so we had to close 2 runways for a short period of time. But by having an ops person out there, we can mitigate the situation, get the aircraft removed as quickly as possible, and coordinate with the FAA if that's required. And Tracy, I'll let you touch on the P3s.
The P3 are the performance measures. I know you've received reports on these during our financial updates as well. These are published with the budget. And just to review the existing performance measures, we will be revising and submitting new performance measures with the new budget prior to the end of the year. Conduct an emergency plan tabletop exercise that was completed in October, participated in by first responders, a very helpful exercise. Review and update background check database that refers to badges, and we have completed this and gotten our background database. It's very important to us. Doesn't mean a lot to other folks, but it means we're getting charged correctly, so it was an important project to do, having to do with issuing badges. We achieved 94 or 5% on the FAA.
95.
95 on the FAA inspection. They have a long laundry list of items they look at, which is made up of the long laundry list you just looked at with additional subdivisions. And so you can see how we do the math, the number of discrepancies that we receive. And so we ended up with 95, and we're proud of that. That's a good score. We have a emergency notification system that can really be a lifesaver when you have one person in the SSC and something happens and you need to make many phone calls all at once. So we have a P3 to make sure we keep the system tested. We work with Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting to conduct periodic 3-minute drills, and they have responded to all of them within the required time. It's good practice for them. We have gotten all of our badges vetted within 48 hours of submitting the application. We did have a real glitch recently with the badging process. The FBI upgraded their system, so we did have which impacted our own people more than others, but that has since been repaired, and we're very pleased that the badge office is up and running smoothly right now. Noise abatement meetings, they've been quarterly now for the past, 7 or 8 years, and mostly attended by the Hope Ranch Committee member, as well as Tower, FBOs, and airlines, and we're getting great cooperation from all of the airlines and aircraft owners. We're very pleased with that. And then we have the P3 to where when we get a noise complaint, we analyze it and determine that the aircraft operator could have flown the noise abatement approach but did not, then we will contact them and send them a letter. Many times we call them, the calls actually seem to work better, but we do contact them, so it's been a successful performance measure. And that would bring us to a conclusion. So if there's any questions, Kelly and I would be happy to answer them.
An excellent report. Thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have comments or questions?
I guess I was curious about the change to the access control system. I know maybe 6 months ago or more, maybe it's been a lot longer, like the sequence changed. And is that going to be changing again, or is it pretty much stable in terms of how the system is used?
It will not be changing again. The way it is now is the way it will stay. The area of the airfield that you entered was the very first area changed.
Thanks.
By coincidence only.
Yeah, sure.
As a payback for your years of service as a chair, I thought we'd give you a little present there.
And the training video will be, or has already been updated?
It's in process, yeah.
Okay, great.
On training too, I just want to comment that another element of the training that we've instituted for all of those who carry badges or have badges is customer service training for anyone in the airline terminal as well as our staff and the volunteers that work both for the ambassadors and for the visitor center, just so that we have a single voice, the way that we would like our passengers and travelers and visitors to be received and treated while they're here at the airport. So we contacted all of our tenants. They were very receptive to that, and that is 10, 15 minutes. I'm not sure, maybe 10, 12 minutes. Oh, 17 minutes. But it is training, and I think that's a good thing that we've added as well.
They're online videos that are very convenient for them to view from home or wherever.
And when you say tenant, you mean like the car rental folks and the airline?
The airline staff, the restaurant, gift shop, anyone who carries a badge inside the terminal or airport staff will have that.
I am quite aware that it's a monumental task, but do you have a guesstimate of how many badges, how many doors and gates there are that are affected by this? I think the general public would really, the viewing public would really enjoy knowing how monumental it is.
We have 1,400 active badges in our system right now, and that number grows daily.
In doors and gates,
I
there's a whole plan, I know.
We have well over 100 doors and gates and over 60 cameras that are part of the access control system. And camera motors and camera domes, and it's a lot of maintenance.
But you don't have a dome of silence, though.
No, we don't.
Anything else? The next item is airport advertising request for qualifications.
Yes, I'm going to have Rebecca give you an update on this particular project. As you know, we're always looking for opportunities to provide a new revenue source for the airport. And in this case, we want to, we have not had an updated advertising program. Goodness, Rebecca would probably tell you it's been 15 years or thereabouts. So it's time with the new terminal that we approach this. And it will also incorporate our ground transportation element as well. So with that, I'll quit talking and turn it over to Rebecca.
Thank you. As you may remember, when we were still in the old terminal, our advertising program consisted pretty much of hotel motel courtesy boards that advertised a few hotels and the off-airport rental cars, and they were located in the baggage claim tents. We had an advertising company at that time that specialized in airport advertising, J.C. Deco, and when their contract came up, we went out with an RFP, but we only got one response, and it turned out that we were so small in terms of our emplanements that the financial deal that they were offering us was really not attractive. So we decided that for that short period of time while we were constructing the new terminal, that staff would just take over the running of the hotel motel courtesy boards. And oddly enough, they were so old, J.C. Deco was happy to give them to us at no cost. And so we managed the program for a few years internally. And then once the new terminal was constructed, we intended to go out with an RFP for advertising. As it happened, staff has been rather busy getting the major parts of the terminal up and running, including the concessions and the build-outs and the art program and various things. So we're now getting to the point where we feel we can devote some time to the advertising program. We decided internally that we would go out with an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications rather than a request for proposals, because we really want to have a lot of hands-on input from staff in the development of the advertising program. When you do an RFP, typically the advertisers will come in and they'll have a package and they'll say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to put ads here, and they'll go through your terminal and they'll identify every possible space that doesn't have something on the wall. And they'll do cardboard cutouts and, you know, information on this thing and that thing, and want to put a car in your lobby. And by the time they get done, you completely lose control over the aesthetics of what they're presenting. We felt that because the terminal is such a beautiful building, that we wanted to make sure that whatever we came up with in the way of an advertising program left us space to still continue with a regional art program, and also was tastefully done. So primarily at the moment, we're looking at continuing to use electronic media for the presentation of advertising. We currently have monitors upstairs in the hold rooms that run advertising. Those are provided through Prodigic, which is the company that came to us actually in the old terminal when they were first starting their business, proposing to do advertising that was pertinent to each destination that people were going to. So in other words, if you were flying to Sacramento, they would have Sacramento businesses advertising on the screens. That I don't think ever developed quite the way they were hoping that it would, but we are getting 10% of their gross receipts for the advertising that they do put on those monitors. In addition, they came along later and had developed a program for real-time flight information displays. As you'll remember, in the old terminal, each individual airline had their own flight information displays, and staff was responsible for updating them, and it was not at all unusual for, you know, your flight to have come in and landed, and up on the screen it still said it was delayed. Or alternately, it would say that it just dropped off entirely. I had that happen once waiting for my daughter to come in, and her flight just disappeared.
That was airline staff who updated those?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we had a lot of complaints from our passengers about the fact that, you know, what was going on. So when Prodigic came to us with the proposition to install software and monitors that would list all the flights and would pick up the data as the changes were made through the routing professionals for each airline, we jumped on the chance to do that, and it's been much, much more successful for us. As a part of that, along the bottom of the screen, they also do some little advertising, or have the ability to do that. Their contract for the advertising monitors is a month-to-month contract. And at the time that we go out with this RFQ, we would certainly invite them to participate, but we will end that contract when we've chosen a new advertising company. The other contract for the flight information display systems is totally separate and will not be included as part of this request for qualifications. So what we're doing at this point is we've developed a draft RFQ. We took it to the marketing subcommittee. They looked at it and gave us some very good input in terms of not only our process and the timing thereof, but of other things that we might about to think about, including in the contract itself and also in the request for qualifications. So what we would propose to do is have a solicitation. It'll be on our website. It'll go to all the people that have indicated an interest in being in our advertising agency. And we will have a panel that will evaluate the proposals that we receive. And what we're actually requesting is references and samples of existing work. We're not looking for specific proposals for our terminal because we want to have input on deciding what that program is going to be at the end of the day. And we'll be evaluating those based on their organizational summary and background, proposed advertising program elements, available staff resources, available financial resources, and their current clientele and related experience. We'll hold a mandatory pre-bid meeting so that they have the opportunity to walk through the terminal, and staff can tell them which areas in the terminal we feel are available for additional advertising, and to give them an opportunity to ask questions directly to us. Following that meeting, there will be a period of time where they can submit written questions, and then we will issue an addendum to the RFQ so that all of the proposers have access to all of the questions and answers at the same time. Once that's completed, we'll probably have a short list of companies that will interview, the panel will interview, and then based on those interviews, a selection will be made and the selected company will be notified. The term of the agreement that we're proposing is 3 years with 2 additional option years, and those options would be at the pleasure of the airport. The airport will receive at least a 10% share of the advertising revenue. That's fairly standard for the industry at this time, but we are doing additional research to make sure that that percentage has not increased prior to the time that we put out the RFQ. And I would like to have Tracy just give you an idea, because Tracy's been very involved with this, as has Lynn Houston, who's our marketing and communications staff member. One of the things that we're going to be doing is putting a large touchscreen in the Visitor Information Center, and Tracy's been instrumental in the purchase of that equipment. So I'd like him to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do.
It will be a large 65-inch touchscreen. It'll be located near the visitor information desk in baggage claim as you first enter baggage claim. It's on the left. Main function is it will replace the old school courtesy board. There'll be hotels up there. You want to shuttle to this hotel, you can get it using this touch screen similar to the way you used to pick up the phone and press the button. There'll also be many opportunities for this firm that we get to provide advertising space on that. It's hooked up directly to the internet, and they will have a content management software. They can work wonders on it. They can put a firework display on it. You've seen them. They can put them in sequence and make it change as you walk by. We're not buying them in sequence, we'll just have one. But the point being is what they are capable of doing with the software that allows the content to jump and make noise. It can be a very interesting and visually attractive. So we want people to look at it. We expect that to be up shortly after we get them on board. We're not going to put it up until we have them on board, so it's not sitting there blank.
And one of the advantages of that particular situation is that whereas the Hotel Motel Courtesy Board was limited to just literally hotels and motels, this installation will allow us to put in museum advertisements or restaurants or any wine tours or any of the other things that are available in the community, which gives us a much broader base for our potential advertisers. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
The display media is going to be primarily digital screens?
Primarily digital screens. We'll start out at least with the ones that we have up in the hold rooms and the Hotel Motel Courtesy Board space or the big board space. And then we'll work with the advertisers with any recommendations that they might have for other potential spots or types of advertising.
The rather detailed process that you laid out for the selection, what's the endpoint time in which you would expect to have the 3-year contract with the 2 1-years?
I would hope to have somebody on board by the summer of 2015. Our schedule was a little bit aggressive when we initially met with the marketing subcommittee, so we're going to revise that backwards and give the advertisers a little bit more time to make their presentations. But since they're not actually developing a new presentation for us, we should be able to be a little bit more compact, since mostly what they're presenting is their references.
Any other questions or comments? Excellent, thank you very much. And
Thank you.
I believe we have no action to take here, is that?
No, just a staff report, that was it.
So next is a staff report on the 6100 Hollister Avenue development.
That's correct. I thought it would be helpful to bring a status report back to Airport Commission about our potential development on the north side of Hollister, and then perhaps do this on a quarterly basis as events change. So tonight I wanted to give you just a refresher course. I know everyone knows the background on this particular parcel, but it's located directly north of where we're sitting right now. The red box is what's referred to as parcel 22, and it's called that because when we completed this specific plan for our commercial industrial area back in 1997, we also did a parcel map for the north side. And so that 15-acre or just shy of 15 acres is referred to as parcel 22 or 6100 Hollister Avenue. We did adopt the specific plan, or the city did, in 1997. This acreage has had several major solicited and unsolicited proposals for development over the years, none of which have materialized, primarily because we were looking to do a long-term lease. The city charter limits that to 50 years, and economically, that was not sufficient for the development. So we were never able to go forward with any of those proposals. And at one time, there were planning commission entitlements with square footage and development plans, but all of those entitlements have expired. Additionally, this land has been released by the FAA for aviation purposes. It's still restricted as far as any revenue that's generated on the property has to be used for the operation, maintenance, and capital improvement of the airport, but it does not have to be an aviation use. And that was done back in 1983, thereabouts, when the Southern California Edison development, that 12-acre parcel was developed so that we could entertain that proposal. So the property, as I said, it is zoned commercial industrial. It is about 15 acres. Part of the parcel includes Love Park. And as you know, or might recall, Love Park was developed when Southern California Edison built their facility because there was a requirement for certain square footage of landscaping. And Edison didn't want to restrict their 12-acre parcel with more landscaping than they needed. So the balance of it was developed into this park, which is sitting there, and it's actually a part of their leasehold. And it is used by the tenants on the north side for lunch and for just walks as well. And I mentioned that it's not encumbered by FAA aviation use restrictions. So in 2010, City Council, after the failure of all the other proposals, Council met with airport staff and said, okay, let's look at the airport developing this land either for lease, long-term lease, or for the airport to actually construct and then lease out these parcels to light industrial businesses. So we took that challenge and we developed 13 different parcels. We looked at building sizes, and we came up with a concept designed for the industrial building after the years. So do we have that? But back on the other one too, we came up with a concept design. We looked at the cost of construction. We did a financial pro forma for us to borrow money and actually develop. That's when that project kind of came to a halt because the return on investment wasn't there. I mean, we could borrow the money, we could construct it, but we couldn't generate enough revenue to pay off the debt and also generate any revenue for the airport. It was a wash. So we were kind of stymied, but then along came Direct Relief. And they, as you know, they're a nonprofit, nonpartisan agency here in town who started actually in Santa Barbara back in 1948, I believe. And they have a need for a new facility. They negotiated with the city for a purchase. We initially talked lease, but once again, the 50-year restriction was a hindrance. So they offered to purchase 6 to 8.5 acres. And that agreement, the purchase and sale agreement, was approved by City Council on August 5th. And that, while it's an unprecedented concept for Santa Barbara to sell airport land, it did provide the unique opportunity for us to pick up our development plan and say, okay, now we've gone forward with a lot of detail, and now it's time to see if we can actually do this with the proceeds from the sale. And I think that's going to benefit us in the long term. So the sale proceeds have not, the exact dollar amount has not been determined because they're still doing their development site plan to determine the exact square footage. We have a minimum return to the airport of $25 per square foot. That could be higher because we'll do an appraisal 90 days before we close. And then we will use that money for development purposes. This is the most recent site plan for the Direct Relief development on the parcel. They are looking at least 100,000 square feet for a warehouse, 25,000 square feet for office. They are concerned that now's the time to probably reserve some square footage as well for future development. And they will be going to City Council on February 24th to get their allocation for square footage. The airport has provided a certain amount of square footage from our allocation that we had from demolition of buildings, small additions, and the formulas that were set forth in the specific plan. But they need more square footage than we have, so they will be going to City Council for council to consider that. So it's possible that they would ask for an additional 30,000 square feet in addition to the 125,000. So we took our schematic plan for the building type that we had been looking at over since 2010, 12, and 13 to ABR, Architectural Board of Review, on January 20th, just to see if the concept would be acceptable because it is fronting on Hollister, and we really wanted to get ABR's input. And the structure that we've identified because of cost and wanting to spread the revenue that we have for development as far as we can go with it, we're looking at a metal type building as opposed to concrete tilt-up. And ABR was very supportive. Quite frankly, I was kind of shocked that they were as supportive as they were. We really received very high comments and good input. They thought it was consistent with the specific plan, which the small parcels, small buildings, light industrial, that's what the specific plan was all about, and that it was an appropriate and viable project for the airport vicinity, and that they could support the project, which was really good. I have some images, I believe. This is what we took to disregard the title page here. It's not a technology center. That was one of the concepts for a name for this parcel. But this is an illustration of the type of building that is conceivable for the area. And it would be LEED silver as a minimum. Some other elevations. You'll notice that our niche has always been having an office, a single office, not multiple offices, but quite frankly, an office, a restroom, and then an open space with roll-up doors. That's the airport niche, and that's what we're designing for. And whether this building could be separated into smaller units that could be expanded over, if your business expands a little bit, you need it, or if 3 businesses doing light industrial can, zoning-wise, can live next door to each other. So that's our concept. So we also, because City of Goleta is a partner to the airport and has been for years, they're also very interested in how this development goes forward. And they, through their city council, set up an ad hoc committee. And we met, I had a first meeting on February 4th, and we had their mayor and Councilman Bennett was there. Your city attorney was there. So we had a contingent from Goleta, and then from the city of Santa Barbara, we had the mayor and Paul Casey, Bob Samario, and I attended along with Michael Holliday, who was the architect who came up with the concept design by contract with the airport. So we wanted to brief Goleta's group on where we were, both with Direct Relief in their development as well as the airport's. And we're committed to keeping them in the loop as we go forward, and we'll be making additional presentations as the project develops. So the next step for us is to get another architect contract going. And so the Public Works Department put out a request for qualifications. to carry this project forward through concept design, design development, and construction documents so that we can be ready when the money comes in. So we received 7 proposals from different architectural firms. We interviewed 4 firms, and we hope to have a consultant retained by March 15th. That concludes my report. Be happy to answer any questions.
You mentioned that the ABR, this is the Santa Barbara ABR, was the group you met with in Goleta as positive as the reception you got from the ABR in terms of aesthetics and idea?
I believe so. I think Goleta did have some concerns about Hollister frontage, making sure that we had sidewalks, curbs, and gutters along the way. And they will provide comments to us about the design and the type of buildings. But at this point, I think the general concept for light industrial buildings on that parcel is acceptable.
And you showed us a picture of a single unit. What were you anticipating in terms of the number of those types of units on that strip there?
I believe that we have 6 or 8 buildings on the remaining parcel that we'll receive back. It's conceivable that Direct Relief will not take all of the 8.5 acres, and if they don't, then there could be an extra small parcel where we could fit another building. But we will phase that construction. As you know, it's not just going to be spec building, because we'll want a tenant to go in when we build. But then our intent is to do the full build-out over a phased period of time.
Of those 4 firms, are any of the architectural firms local?
All of them are local.
Good.
Mhm. Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. That was excellent.
Okay.
Next comes a history of the Santa Barbara Airport video.
This, I have to tell you, Tony Ruggieri is, he's received so many awards for his documentaries and for the work that he does on Channel 18. And so he started this project along with Karen Ramsdale 2 years ago. maybe?
January of 2012.
I was right, 3 years ago.
I had to look it up.
So it's been a long endeavor, and it is really, I think it's going to just be phenomenal once it's up and operational, and I think it just about is. And so tonight I wanted Tony to kind of give you a background of the history videos that he's created with the assistance of Ms. Ramsdale. Tony.
Thanks, Hazel. My name's Tony Ruggieri. I'm City TV Production Supervisor. And you normally see us out here running cameras for your airport commission meetings, and we do about 10 other city commissions and committees that we televise, in addition to providing service to the city of Goleta as well. So we do a lot of meetings, so it's fun when we get to work on a project such as this. Not that meetings aren't enjoyable, they're our bread and butter.
However.
But this project has been really, really interesting to work on. Like I said, we've been working on it since January of 2012. We have interviewed about 27 people about the history of the airport. And the project is called Above and Beyond, a History of Santa Barbara Aviation. And early on, we decided that really to tell the story of the airport, you had to kind of go back a little bit to the early aviation days in Santa Barbara as well, because that's what started the whole need to have an airport. So we start back, just to give you a brief idea of what's in it, start back in about 1911 when the first barnstormers came into Santa Barbara and had a couple demonstrations that they did. They actually landed on the front lawn of the Potter Hotel and took off from Hope Ranch and flew around for a while. And then we go through the Lockheed Brothers, and you probably all know, the story of the Lockheed Brothers, and then we get into some of the early airfields where people started to, aviation started to become a larger interest in the community and nationwide. Um, and so the search started, for a location for an airport. And in the 20s, there were airports all over the place. There were probably 12 or 15 of them in town, ranging from Carpinteria out to Goleta. And eventually, they all went by the wayside, and we started, this one became the primary airport for the area. And then we take the history from the 30s, when Santa Barbara Airport, became the main airfield, through the Marine Corps Air Base, post-World War II, through all the general aviation that began to happen, from all the returning GIs that learned to fly, and general aviation became big. We take it through the road races that used to happen out here. And we were able to find some great home movies of some of those road races. So that's all in the film. And then really the high-tech industry after that, and technology started to take over in some of the aviation. We have the Guppy. We have a lot of aerospace work that was done on airport property and in Goleta and next to the airport property, related to the space race and things like that. And then we finish off by going through the airport master plan, and then the new terminal. So I think we've hit about everything. Certainly not everything is in the film, but we tried to get most of it. The movie itself is about 2 hours long, so you're going to see 6 minutes tonight. You'll see a little promo. And we're premiering it, it'll premiere on March 7th at 8 p.m., and what we'll do is send out an email through Hazel to everybody on the commission and interested parties with the air dates. So we'll be airing it on Channel 18 starting in March.
Are we going to be able to put it up on Tracy's big flat screen before they get advertising on there?
You just missed the film festival then.
Oh, well.
Right, yeah, we'll go for next year maybe. Actually, Hazel was probably going to say this, but in the historic terminal, there is a smaller touchscreen in the history display room, 27-inch touchscreen that will have this film on it. So anyone that's visiting that display can click on a chapter from the movie and watch the World War II piece, or there's about 6 or 7 different chapters that you could actually sit there and watch, and that is almost operational. We're still working out just a couple things, but that will be there in the next week or two, I'm hoping. And then to watch the entire thing, you can watch it on Channel 18, and I'm guessing it will be online as well at some point. Just a couple more things. Like I said, we interviewed 27 people, and because the project took so long, 2 of those people have passed. And their stories, each of them had some things that I'll always remember interviewing them about. One person was Walter Docker, who was in his 90s when he passed. He I think worked at Delco and was kind of involved working out here near the airport property. But he recounts a couple stories that were really interesting. Back in the 20s, people used to build aircraft in their barns. And so he was a young kid at the time, and he met somebody on Milpas Street that owned a shoe store that was building an airplane in his garage or something. And he told him one day, hey, if you come out the next morning at 6 a.m., we're going to fly this plane. So he was excited, and he got out there at 6 in the morning the next day, and so they had this airplane on De La Guerra Street at Milpas, and they pushed it down the little slope on De La Guerra and flew it down De La Guerra towards downtown until it came to an abrupt landing into the side of a bank on Garden Street. But no one was hurt. But in those days, you could just apparently fly wherever you could. And then one other story, he flew out of, you all know that the original airport here was a cow pasture. In the early days, and so he was able to get somebody to fly him. This was in the early 1930s when there were still cows on the property, and whoever the proprietor of the field was at the time told the pilot that, well, when you come in for a landing, buzz the field a couple times to scare away the cows. And so that, yeah, he had a couple great stories like that. And then the other person who passed away was Ralph Northhart, who was stationed here in 1944 at the Marine Corps base. Came from another part of the country and ended up meeting his wife at a USO dance that they put on at the base. And he just has some great firsthand accounts of what it was like to be stationed here and go through the training, and then get shipped off. And he came back and married the girl that he met and lived in Santa Barbara until he passed just actually about 3 weeks ago. He passed away. So if you watch the whole film, you'll see those stories, and we'll watch the short video now. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Did the folks who passed away have an opportunity to see their piece of this?
They did not, unfortunately, and I'm trying to get in contact with their families and relatives so they can, because we have all the raw footage of their interviews, and I think it would be a great family history, piece for them to have a DVD with the entire interviews on them.
Are you going to produce this on DVD? Will it be for sale or at Redbox or in the gift shop, perhaps?
We haven't talked about that, but
Another
we,
revenue source.
that's right. Yeah, we could do that, and we will make DVDs out of it for sure. And then, yeah, we can talk about maybe having it out at the airport for sale.
I'm glad you thought of that.
Thank you.
Didier Masson's plane went up and just thrilled the crowds out there. So he just clips the palm trees and lands on the front lawn of the Potter Hotel. The people just go ballistic. They come streaming out of the hotel. They pull him out of the airplane. They're toasting him with champagne. I mean, he just got a rock star's welcome to the Potter Hotel.
When the Lockheeds decided to come down here, their first airplane of anything was a homemade, what they called Model G seaplane.
Top star Mary Miles Minter christened the airplane when it was on its initial voyage down the ramp. The plane took off, and it was a great success for the Lockheed brothers.
Ovington, it was really a dangerous stunt to have this large sack of mail on his lap while he's trying to fly a plane. And he knew that he couldn't land the plane with this bag, so he made arrangements beforehand to let the field in Mineola know that he was going to just throw it overboard.
I remember going out there and watching the DC-3 come in and landing on a dirt field.
Well, United Airlines, and it's kind of its former self, started service at the Santa Barbara Airport, actually before it was the Santa Barbara Airport, in 1936.
The community voted, and the headline said 10,000 people to vote, and the bond issue was $149,000, and the community purchased the land for their designated as the Santa Barbara Airport.
My father lived at a very interesting time because he learned to fly in a Jenny, and his last airplane was a twin-engine jet. So it was a pretty interesting time in aviation. We certainly aren't going to see that again.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941.
With the creation of the Marine base, suddenly we've got a much greater demand for flying, especially for landing strips.
The target plane would fly straight and level, but the other planes would dive past the target, and you'd have to shoot at it as you went by, or they'd come up this way, and you have to shoot at it as you went back up.
One of the clubs here in town put on these sports car road races, and the old Flightline restaurant was right in the middle of the pit area.
The starting line was kind of out on this limp out here, and then they went around up one of the runways and around a few of the buildings, came by the hangar, came down this road, and now back to the starting line or finish.
It was interesting. It was the longest series race like that in the United States at the time, and it raised a lot of money for the community.
Jack Conroy, he was, of course,
course, the president of Aerospace Lines, a new company. He liked Santa Barbara, and so it was his idea to move the whole operation to Santa Barbara.
We had 13 air tankers there at any given time. So it was pretty much nonstop all day from sunup to sundown.
We've had, over the years, the Dalai Lama come in. He was being hosted by UCSB. Of course, many actors and actresses, politicians. This seemed to be one of their whistle stops during election years. So for a small airport, it was, it's a pretty exciting little place, I think, because Santa Barbara area is so progressive.
I think the finished airport is very beautiful. It's an example of a community coming together and designing something for the future.
But I also feel really proud that we're able to construct a new terminal that meets modern passenger needs and also is beautiful.
We wanted to do something that was, to us as artists, what inspired us emotionally about Santa Barbara.
The airline industry, the aviation industry as we know it, it will change, it will move on, it will add, it will increase. It will do lots of things. The hope is that this core building will allow for that flexibility.
I think my favorite days would be when someone soloed the first time.
I think aviation is unique in a way that it's a family endeavor.
It is a small airfield, and it is a small community within the airfield.
When I was a young kid, there were two big treats in my life, and that was to go drive out to the airport, which of course was almost a cross-country trip in those days, or go to the railroad station and watch trains. So the airport thing stuck better than the train.
Very, very nice. I look forward to seeing the entire thing. And I think the DVD idea, the airport, is an excellent one.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Next is the director's report.
And I won't keep you too long. I wanted to point out once again with the loss of Frontier Service in January, the month of January's total employments were down 17.3%. That's the bad news. The good news was that United was up 11% in January over the prior January, and Alaska Airlines was also up 2%. So we're hoping that we can continue to work with the airlines we have with the new seats that are here because of United's change in equipment and fill those seats and generate some more traffic. Also to remind you that one of the first public events we're holding in the Ovington Terminal, which is available for lease out, just like downtown Parks and Recreation buildings are. We're going to be hosting the Carpinteria Chamber of Commerce on February 25th from 5 to 7. So if you're interested in participating, we'd love to have you join us. One other item that I wanted to call your attention to, Commissioner Wilson had asked for a monthly short snippet of information regarding our finances and also kind of tracking how the concessions are doing in the terminal. And we have added that to the director's report. And we'll do that on a monthly basis so that you can kind of keep an eye on how things are going at the terminal. And with that, that concludes my report, unless you have other questions for me.
Questions?
Oh, very nice. It's great to see the summary in there, and it's even greater to see that you're holding expenditures at 9.5% below budget. So it's very
Keep in
good.
mind that that does not include the encumbrances, and if I add those in, then we're closer to 2%. But
Well, it's nice to see that we're in the black ink.
right now,
Yeah.
and that's our goal, to stay there.
Anything else? Then I think we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Yeah.